The story took place in the summer of 2013 when I was a counselor. The hospital arranged for me to attend an intensive course for counselors. This course was very informative, and one of the highlights was for each participant to experience hypnosis personally. When I first heard about this requirement, I felt a little nervous and uneasy. I had never experienced hypnosis in person and had no idea what it would feel like. However, my colleagues were excitedly looking forward to the experience. We received some training and instruction before conducting hypnosis, to make sure we were able to relax and enter the hypnotic state. As I lay back in the chair and entered the hypnotic state, I felt myself gradually relaxing and my body gradually becoming heavy. In that state, I felt as if I was floating in a dream world. The guide continued to guide me and asked me to imagine that I was on a beautiful beach. I listened to the sound of the waves lapping against the shore and felt the warm sunlight shining on my body. I felt very relaxed and happy. Finally, the instructor slowly guided me back into the real world. When I woke up, I felt my body and mind were fully relaxed and I felt very comfortable and refreshed. This hypnosis experience made me feel the power of hypnosis and gave me a better understanding of the principles and applications of hypnotherapy. My first session went very well and I was able to relax and control myself very well. Afterwards, I had dinner with my colleague and prepared to go back to the hotel to rest. It was becoming dark by then. When I got back to the hotel, I was ready to go to rest. Not long after I laid down, I started to feel tightness in my chest. The feeling came and went very quickly. Although I had had similar pains many times before, this time the tightness was more pronounced and made me a little worried. The next morning, I woke up still feeling a little uncomfortable, but I decided to attend the class that day anyway. As I was in the initial stages of the session and ready to get into a relaxed state, the pain in my chest became even worse. I felt an invisible force squeezing in my chest, making it impossible for me to breathe. I told my teacher about the situation and told them I needed help. The pain in my chest also became more intense, as if a hand was holding my heart tightly. I felt like I was going to die. Suddenly, I heard a loud sound, like thunder. The next thing I knew, I was out of my body. My pain disappeared instantly and I found myself suspended in the upper left side of my body. It all happened very quickly. I felt like I was in a very calm state, like I was suspended in space, without any gravity or restraints. The experience was amazing. But it also scared me. I didn't know what was happening or if I would ever be able to return to my body. Suddenly, I was transported to another dimension. I was wrapped in a gentle silence. There was not a sound around me, only a bright light. I cannot describe in words how bright that light was, because I had never seen such a light before. The color of the light was also hard to describe in words, as if it was white distilled from other colors. That light exuded a strong aura of love and acceptance. I had a strong urge to get as close to that light as possible. I felt myself becoming light and free from the bonds of gravity, as if I could fly in this infinitely wide space. I didn't want to leave this place, I wanted to stay in that place forever. In order for you to be able to understand my story, I need to explain some of my previous experiences. When I was young, my father abused me verbally and physically. Every time I was abused, I felt helpless and desperate. It was like being trapped in a dark place, unable to find a way out. I wanted my own father to approve of me, but he always criticized me and made me feel very sad. During that time, I had doubts about my worth and even began to wonder if I really deserved to be loved. This feeling of helplessness made me feel desperate. I had also had a very painful marriage. I prayed that God would save my marriage. I tried everything to save my marriage. But in the end I failed. My greatest heartache is that I still have 2 daughters and I can't give them a complete home. I didn't want them to grow up in this environment. They are more important to me than anything else. My wife once told me, either I leave or she takes the kids and leaves me. I thought it was best for my daughters that I leave. That way they could remain at home and their lives would not change much. I feel fortunate that my oldest daughter is old enough to understand the situation. She is doing very well in all areas. My younger daughter, however, clearly did not understand what was happening. She was only 6 years old. As I was packing to leave, she came into the bedroom. She gently tugged on my sleeve and said in a trembling little voice, "Daddy, I don't want you to leave, will you come back?" There are no words to express the sadness I felt at that moment. I took my 2 daughters into my arms and told them while sobbing, "I feel very sorry." As I now stood in the presence of this light, all the pain I had felt before was healed. I heard a gentle voice say, "Give me your sorrow, you can hang on, and everything will be fine." These words kept repeating in my ears. Then I saw 2 long rays of light coming out of the light and touching my head and cheeks. These rays conveyed love and energy. Then, it embraced me completely. It let me release all my sorrow and pain. These 2 rays embraced me over and over again. It was the most intense emotional experience I have ever experienced. I don't know how to accurately describe this feeling. The feeling was so real and made me feel more at ease and calm than ever before. With the light shining through, I knew I was no longer alone. I felt an unconditional love. This kind of love does not require any quid pro quo, just a pure acceptance and understanding. I don't know how long I have been here, but time is no longer an important concept to me. A man's voice told me, "You have a lot of work to do. You have to go back now." The words made me feel uneasy because I didn't want to leave this wonderful place. As the voice faded away, my surroundings began to become a blur. The bright light also began to fade. I began to feel an uneasiness that I didn't want to leave this wonderful place and I didn't want to go back to real life. But I knew that I had to go back. I don't know how I came back. When I woke up again, I found myself lying on the floor. My mentors and classmates were all around me. They were so happy to see me wake up. At this point in my life, my emotional state was so complicated and confusing. I felt both shocked and frustrated, and at the same time felt inner peace and comfort. My mentor told me that they didn't call an ambulance because she thought I was going through some kind of spiritual experience. She told me later that as I lay on the floor, my face glowed and tears streamed down my face. There was a rag doll on the floor that I had been holding. I gently stroked it as I cried softly. Although it sounds a little weird, that's the way it was. At this time, I realized that this rag doll was more than just a toy, it represented something inside of me. My teacher told me that this rag doll now belonged to me and that I could have it forever. This souvenir is very meaningful to me. It represents love and care, so I can always feel this emotion. I have kept it until now. After that coma, I went to the hospital to undergo a series of tests. The doctors told me that I did not have a heart attack. They could not determine the exact cause, but they thought it was a sudden onset of illness. I felt very confused and upset because I didn't know if the disease would reappear. However, after a month, I noticed that the pain in my chest disappeared. I began to feel much lighter throughout. I regained my health and energy. I returned home with my mind full of doubts. Not knowing exactly what this experience meant or what to do next. Suddenly, I heard the same voice I had heard a few days earlier, and it rang out again, growth. This voice was very clear, as if it came from another world, full of energy and determination. It repeated once more, grow. This time the voice was louder, full of expectation and encouragement for me. Then it repeated itself again, but this time in a commanding tone, as if telling me, you must grow. This voice echoed in my head and made me feel a strong force pushing me. I began to think about what was missing in my life, what I needed to change, what I needed to do. I began to look for answers in my own life. I invested more time and energy into exploring my inner world and understanding the meaning of my life. I worked hard to change my way of thinking and my habits, and began to meet challenges and opportunities with confidence. After this incident, I tried to salvage my marriage again. After a period of time, we restarted our marriage. I clearly remember that sunny morning when I stood at her door. My heart was beating very fast. I knocked on the door and she opened it. We looked at each other and didn't speak, just felt each other's presence in silence. Suddenly, I took out a ring and said, I know I have made many mistakes, but I am willing to make changes for you. Are you willing to marry me again? Tears came to her eyes, then she nodded and said, I do. We both hugged each other tightly. I feel so blessed that I can continue to live with my 2 daughters. They were also a big part of the reason we remarried. We were reunited as a family again and started a new life. My life has changed a lot. I became more confident and determined and began to live more positively. I felt I became more mature and began to understand the true meaning of life. When I was 10 years old, my parents got divorced. This was a huge blow for a child. I decided to live with my mom because I knew she needed my company more than anything else. My mom was a lover of life and she was always able to bring joy to people. She loved the outdoors so much that she often took my brother and me hiking or swimming at the beach. One time, we decided to go swimming at the beach. This time, Mom brought along her date. He was a middle-aged man who looked very clean. He had short blonde hair and wore a blue bathing suit. Although he wasn't really tall, he had a great air about him. When we arrived at the beach, there seemed to be no other tourists around and the whole beach was very quiet. The breeze was blowing from the sea, giving a very comfortable feeling. We played on the beach for a while, and I decided to play in the shallows. Mom was watching us from a short distance away. The sea water was up to my thighs. I turned my head and asked my mom if I could go deeper to play. Mom smiled and nodded and said, yes, but you need to be careful not to swim too far. I nodded and started to go deeper. The water became deeper and deeper, and I started to feel a little nervous. As I swam deeper into the water, a strong current was pulling me deeper into the ocean. My body started to get out of control. I tried hard to keep my balance, but the current was too strong. I felt like I was trapped in a washing machine, being pushed and tumbled round and round by the current. The current was getting stronger and stronger, carrying me deeper to the bottom. I didn't know what to do to escape. I felt my body gradually sinking to the bottom of the sea. I wanted to scream for help, but my mouth was already filled with seawater. I could feel that my life was passing a little. My body was getting weaker and weaker, and eventually I lost consciousness. Next, something strange happened. My soul seemed to have separated from my body. I was floating above my body, about 1 floor above the sea level. My consciousness became very clear, and my vision became so open that I could see everything around me. I now had no shape and no color, just like air. I saw my body floating in the seawater, like a toy that had lost its life. It was strange to see this scene because I knew that my body was dead, but my consciousness still existed. My consciousness was no longer confined within my body, and I felt freer than ever. I was no longer limited to time and space, but had an infinite sense of existence. I can move my soul at will, I have unlimited freedom and energy, and this feeling makes me feel incredibly happy. Here, I did not see any tunnel, nor did I see any other soul. A force suddenly pulled me to move upward. As I entered the cloud layer, my ascent became faster and faster. I felt liberated by my spirit. Eventually, I reached my destination. I knew this was heaven. Everything here made me feel very excited. I was shocked by the sights I saw. It was a place of radiant light. I saw all kinds of strange creatures that looked like they were from another world. This place also has all kinds of wonderful buildings and landscapes, which look beautiful and mysterious. Here, I remembered a lot of things from the past. This is the place where I was born. Suddenly I heard someone talking to me. You are right, this is your home. All souls are born here. I knew that voice was the voice of Jesus. In that moment, I was surrounded by his love. Jesus said, "Welcome home, my child. I know you have many questions, and I will help you answer them." I looked at him with some confusion and then began to ask any question that came to my mind. "Will I ever get married?" I asked. Jesus smiled and replied, "Yes, you will meet a nice girl after you graduate from college." I asked again, "Is it true about Satan?" Jesus replied, "Yes, Satan exists, but his power is not unlimited. He will only have an effect on you when you are vulnerable." I nodded and I asked again. "So, when will the war between God and Satan end?" Jesus answered, "God has already won the war. God will always be the victor." When I heard this, my heart was filled with faith and strength. "Do you want to see your past life?" Jesus asked. I was very curious. So I said to Jesus, "Sure, show me the old me quickly." Suddenly, I felt as if I had traveled through time and space. I found myself sitting in an old room. I found myself wearing an old-fashioned suit of clothes and the room had a very dreary atmosphere. I gazed at my hands and noticed that they were full of dirt and my skin was very rough. They seemed to have been worked on for a long time. I realized who I was. I was a medieval peasant, living in a humble and poor environment. In my first reincarnation, I was bitten by a poisonous snake while I was working in the field. I saw my thin body lying on the grass, surrounded by some villagers. They tried to help me, but without success. In my second reincarnation, I appeared in a prosperous ancient empire. I was a young scholar who was reading and studying in a library. I was studying ancient culture and history. I was gifted and soon became a respected scholar. However, I saw myself caught up in a political crisis. I was forced to leave my home and go into hiding in a small town. There, I spent the rest of my life. I continued to explore my past lives. In my third reincarnation, I lived in 17th century Europe. I was a female doctor. Women doctors were not very common at that time. I achieved a high status and reputation at that time and was respected and loved by many people. However, my profession made me a target of extremist groups. They accused me of being a witch and burned me on a pole. This scene shook me to the core as to why such a thing could happen. Jesus told me that it was because there were still many inequalities and prejudices in society back then. He said that even today, we still need to fight for true equality and justice. I was greatly enlightened and Jesus helped me to understand life and humanity more deeply. Later Jesus took me to a room. This room was very spacious and bright. And there were many books and artifacts in it. I felt as if I had entered a mysterious museum. Jesus told me that this library holds the memories and history of all souls. He walked me through the bookshelves and introduced me to many mysteries. I saw many interesting historical scenes, including the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, the knights of the Middle Ages, and some earlier civilizations. Jesus told me that each soul has a unique history and story to tell. I asked Jesus if our souls exist for a purpose. He told me that each soul has its own mission and purpose. Some souls have been given a mission to teach and enlighten. Some exist to help others. Still others exist for their own growth and learning. No matter what the goal is, each soul has its own meaning and value. It was at this time that I suddenly heard a familiar voice, the cry of my mother. Her voice was full of fear and anxiety. Jesus said to me, "It's time to make a choice. Do you choose to enter the next life, or do you want to return to your present life?" Jesus waited quietly for my answer. I took a deep breath and then answered, "I want to go back to my present life. I still have a lot to accomplish." Jesus nodded, smiled, and said, "Okay, I respect the decision you have made. Go back to your life, take each day as it comes, and cherish each one." Then, Jesus waved goodbye to me. Slowly, everything in front of me disappeared. My mom was still screaming my name, her eyes filled with tears and despair. I immediately realized that I had to go back into my body. I began to slowly float downward until I re-entered my body. By this time, my heart was beating again and I was once again connected to my body. I plunged my fingers into the sand and crawled blindly under the water. I tried to stay calm, but I felt disoriented. Suddenly, the waves began to recede. I stuck my head out of the water. I saw my mom not far away and she helped me up. Mom didn't scold me, she just kept reassuring me. I lay on the beach and began to cry uncontrollably. My heart was touched in a way that is indescribable. This experience of being close to death made me appreciate life even more. It is a fact that there is life after death. After experiencing this event, I have a whole new perspective on life. I understood that death is not the end of life, but a new beginning. When I saw my past lives, I realized that human life is short and precious. Each person has his or her own mission and goal. We should not just live to satisfy our desires, but to explore our potential and then fulfill our mission. We should cherish every moment in life, whether it is happy or painful. Because these moments are opportunities for us to grow. I believe more than ever in the existence of the soul and the possibility of reincarnation.